It is Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. Welcome once again to Football Today. You know those dudes, Justin Penik, Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose. Producer Mikey, with his cool hair, is back with us as well, as we're like 3-ish weeks, less even, from the start of camp. Bobby, how you holding up, man? Are you craving the beginning of training camp?
I am, but I do like these exercises. I think that's when you can, flex your muscles as a show a little bit. Like, what are we going to talk about in this dead time? So I'm excited for this biggest off season, best off season.
Yeah. So we've done quarterbacks, we've done positional, we've done coaching. So now we're getting into the best off seasons. And originally we were going to do 10, I think the 10 best off seasons. And I was like, started sitting down and kind of going through this. I was like, man, I don't know if there are 10 great off seasons that I love. Penik, did you struggle with that?
I struggled with which six to include. If we were to get to 10,
Yeah.
it would have been tough. I'll tell you, the hardest part of it is just listing like the number one team with the best offseason. And we've been getting very listy on this show. And Trey Wingo reacted to that Dove Kleiman most famous celebrity fan of each NFL team.
Yes.
And Trey Wingo said, "Welcome to list season, where we just list random NFL stuff because we can't wait for football to come back." I would say that's honestly this isn't random stuff. It's good stuff. But I would say that's a pretty good summary of what our summer series has been on Football Today, because we're excited for football to come back.
Yeah.
But I like notes, like this is where it's like you can put together some notes. I put together a 10. And I'm excited about it. Like number 9 on my list might be the team that's like made the biggest changes to their roster, even though I have it ranked 9th. So yeah, could we do a special, like top 32 special teams coordinators episode?
Well, we do have time. I think that's a week from Friday. Probably that's when it'll come out. But we'll have to check Penik's document that he sent out that we haven't been sticking entirely to. I ended up doing 10, by the way. So if you guys want to do 10.
I did 10 too. Justin, you didn't do 10?
I have 8.
Well, then you get to sit out
8.
the first 2, since Bobby and
I'll
did.
sit out the first 2.
Yeah. I'm ranking Justin as the 30th rank best offseason. You got to have 10.
33rd. 33rd.
Yeah, not the 32nd.
No, I liked his better than a couple teams, even though he only had 8.
So,
all right, that's fair. That makes me feel good.
Why don't we start number 10? Who'd you have at 10?
Justin, who'd you have at 10? I had the Titans. Like, I think they've had a nice offseason, right? Like, the Calvin Ridley contract is big, right? But I like what they've done around Will Levis, right? Trying to figure out exactly what Will Levis is and if they're a team that needs to pivot after this next season. Because I think we should have a good feeling, right? Like, you add J.C. Latham and Lloyd Cushenberry to an extremely weak offensive line, right?
Horrible.
It was really bad last year, and then, you add Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd to a wide receiver room that has DeAndre Hopkins. Like, that's not, that what didn't make our list of best, receivers, but that's a nice little trio over there, right? Like, you've got Boyd, who's familiarity with the offense with Callahan. Ridley's still really good, and Hopkins is really good too, despite the fact that he's getting up there in age. And then on the defensive side, like, you brought Snead into the cornerback room, you replace Autry with T'Vondre Sweat. And then I don't like replacing Al Shazier with Kenneth Murray. And I included coaches into this a little bit too. Like, Denard Wilson, to me, was the defensive coordinator hire of the offseason, right? I think that's any team that had a defensive coordinator opening, Denard Wilson was their number one, and he had his pick of multiple teams. Adding that in there, and then obviously, the coaching additions of Brian and Bill Callahan. I like what the Titans have done. They didn't go crazy. Actually, they did go a little crazy. The Calvin Ridley and Snead contracts and the trade for Snead, but I like what the Titans did. They didn't go all in, but they also made sure they're not in a place where they can't evaluate their quarterback.
They're not a horrible watch anymore, and I think that's probably the biggest key for me, is that they have been an eyesore for quite a while. And I don't know, I'm a huge Vrabel guy, but I do think that probably it was best to move on and get a little bit of offensive fresh blood in there. That's pretty good. I had the Steelers at number 10. Does anybody else have the Steelers on their list?
No, but I did like their draft.
Bobby, we can't hear you.
Mike was muted. I'm a little disappointed in their offseason.
Are you?
Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, they don't inspire me at all. And it seems like there was locker room issues with Deontay Johnson, right? But you did lose like a pretty damn good wide receiver. And Patrick Queen's a nice addition, but that's a big contract. Their draft, we really like their draft, but I also don't think their draft is a day one turn things around type of draft.
See,
right?
I think
like the offensive line guys can take some time. Roman Wilson should fit in there fairly well. I just didn't think it was like I think in 2-3 years we might really like that draft, but I don't think it's a year one turnaround.
See, I disagree.
And the quarterback situation, I don't feel good about.
I disagree with you. I think that, number one, we don't have to love Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but I think it's going to be Russ. He is significantly better than what they had last year, and they were a playoff team. So I would at least say I don't have him ranked number 5. I have him ranked number 10 in terms of, best off seasons. I don't know. Who'd you have number 9?
I had the Commanders. Right? Again, another team like 10 of their 22 starters are new additions, right? And I'm really excited to see how this defense performs under Dan Quinn. Because it's like we said, my phrase for them is it's a defense formed in the image of Dan Quinn, but it's Dan Quinn light, right? You add Bobby Wagner at the end of his career. You add the 2 backup ends from Dallas and Dorn Armstrong and Dante Fowler. Jeremy Chin's a nice piece. You get the blitzing linebacker and Frankie Louvu. And then you add 2, maybe 3 starting offensive linemen, depending on how left tackle goes. 10 of the 22 start, like add Eckler to the running back, Ertz, and then they drafted a quarterback. Johnny Newton, if he can stay healthy, can be a nice piece. So they really turned that team around. And although it may not work out, I don't think they took any big risks. But I think Dan Quinn had an identity for this defense and changed that in this offseason. I do worry about their secondary a ton, though.
I had them much, much higher on this list.
Okay.
Much higher. I'll give you my reasoning as to why. Penik, do you even have them on the list?
No, I do not.
Where'd you have them, Rose?
All right, I'll go now. I had them number 4.
Well, I think when a team comes up, we should all say like what our rankings of them were.
I had them number 4. I mean, people forget how bad this team was, particularly defensively last year. They went 4-13 overall. Their quarterback room has been a revolving door ever since Kirk Cousins left town. They've started a different guy week 1. And now I think they've got a guy does he have a lot of learning to do? Absolutely. But does he have a skill set unlike anything we've seen in quite a while there in our nation's capital? Yes, 100%. I loved their draft class as long as Johnny Newton's feet are okay. Sammer's still really good. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. I was a big fan of him. Do not sleep on Luke McCaffrey. I'm telling you, when I was at the Combine, people were just going gaga over him. So he's somebody that's going to add something to their wide receiver room as well. I think that their new decision maker, Adam Peters, got paid by the transaction in the offseason because they added so many people in free agency. I love bringing Bobby Wagner in. He's still a really good football player, but he's also going to hold people accountable. And if that defense is off kilter, not because it's not playing well, but because it looks stupid, he's going to clean that shit up. And so I think that was a huge move for them. So it wouldn't shock me if they get 7 wins this year. Wouldn't.
I actually just put together my records for every team because of some stuff we're getting ready to do, and I had them at
probably 5
I didn't have them very high. I just think that here's some of the negatives, right? I have them at 9. Is I don't love the hiring of Cliff Kingsbury at offensive coordinator, right? I just don't know, how good that's going to end up being, right? He had his struggles in Arizona, and I don't know how much he changed on that. The secondary is a real issue. Like that could be one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. And their offensive line, despite adding some guys, that could be another really weak unit too. And those are 2 units that can get you torched, right? If you got a bad offensive line and then a bad secondary, that's how you lose games by 20 points. And they're in a division with the Eagles and Cowboys that I think are going to be really strong. Our Giants have kind of had their number and added some pass rush. And, Kayvon's best games are versus them.
And Dexter Lawrence, too.
Yeah. So I just think in key units, the offensive line and secondary are a huge issue. And I'm not sure we're going to get a great Jaden Daniels in year one either. That's why I don't have them. But I do like their offseason. Like, I thought they didn't go crazy. And I think their draft was solid. Not one of my favorites, right? Like, I don't like taking Daniels over May. I strongly disagree with that opinion. I love Johnny Newton. We'll see how his feet hold up. And, St. Rissel, Stennard are good players. I don't know if they'll ever be huge difference makers, but they are solid players. So I like their offseason, but I don't love it.
I did a deep dive into the whole Commanders coaching situation. Ben Johnson, I mean, we kind of knew this too, but I will say I've been of the belief that Adam Peters and the Commanders and, maybe attributing that to kind of bad process, they were going to offer Mike McDonald the job. He accepted with the Seahawks before they could actually get him back in there for that final they interviewed him twice, and then that third final meeting they were going to have as like almost like a formality as to the hiring, and then he wound up taking the Seahawks job before then. Ben Johnson just screwed him. They're on the plane to Detroit. Adam Peters and company, they're on the plane to Detroit, going to meet with them. He lets them know while they're in the air, hey, don't want to do it. And I think doing more, Diana Rossini wrote an athletic article with somebody else and doing like a really deep dive into that whole situation. I think Ben Johnson really looks like a bad guy after all that. But that doesn't change the fact that I don't like Dan Quinn as a hire for Adam Peters as the first coach. Even if they did everything right, and they offered McDonald, they wanted McDonald, they went after Ben Johnson. Turns out that he was an asshole to them, or he just wasn't ready. He got cold feet, whatever, lost that playoff game. Doesn't change the fact that the first hire as Dan Quinn, and then even you bring in Cliff Kingsbury's offense coordinator, which I'm a little bit more bought into than I was before, but I'm not bought into Dan Quinn, especially with a Dan Quinn defense that has some nice names, but there is nowhere near the talent that he had in Dallas. So it's a big question on if Dan Quinn can sustain long enough to convince Adam Peters and to convince ownership that he can get this ship going in the right direction. It was a good start to the I can't lie. I mean, I love the draft. The signings that they made were nice. Kind of interesting to see that Tyler Biotish and Dorrance Armstrong, like some of their contracts were backloaded. Very curious to me why you're going to be paying some of these guys the highest amount of their contracts when you already have $37 million. And in let's just say year 3 of Jaden Daniels, you want as much cap space as possible. That's a nitpick, but I didn't love how they fully structured those contracts. So that's why I really don't have them up there.
All right, great.
And guys, again, I don't like Dan Quinn as a head coach hire. I don't like Cliff Kingsbury. And then I think we just kind of gloss over like, oh, well, they drafted a quarterback second overall. But I really disagree with the decision to go Daniels over Drake May, right? And that's where I've learned to kind of like stand on like quarterback's the most important. I remember the Zach Wilson draft. I love what the Jets did, but I didn't like Zach Wilson. But I was like, well, they got their guy. So that's where I'm kind of like, I like what the Commanders did in the draft, I like their free agency, but I think at some of the most important areas, I have worries, right? Like Quinn, Jaden Daniels, and then O-line secondaries are huge question marks for them.
Okay. Number 8, Penik, you want to participate? Do you actually have a team here? Did you fill this one out?
Yeah, I went with the Bengals.
You and I are in the same wavelength. I have them at 8 as well.
I didn't really take much notes because I didn't, because really the main episode is looking at the top 6 here. But I love that they kept T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson. I don't know if they're happy, but I'll tell you what, if they want to get paid, and I love that the Bengals are sticking their ground. No, we're not going to trade you. We don't really have the money to pay you. So guess what? You can either half-ass it, and then you can hit the open market and maybe get less money, or you can play your ass off. You can win a Super Bowl because this team is ready to win a Super Bowl right now and then get paid even more money once you hit the open market. They even added Sheldon Rankins as well. I believe they added DJ Reader as
they
well.
Lost DJ
they
Reader.
lost
They lost DJ Reader. Excuse me, another team that had to go off season.
That's why I almost put the Bengals in this list. I didn't. Is that I think they lost a better player. Like they didn't match like the good player. Now I love their safety additions, right? That was a huge grab for them.
Yes.
And I'm looking at this in the 2024 lens, right? I'm not looking like, down the line. Amarius Mims, I like that pick, but it's probably not going to impact them year one. Even if he was the starter, he might have some issues. He's barely played any football. So I like the Bengals offseason, but I think losing DJ Reader really hurts. And lock T. Higgins up, right? That team is so reliant on their receivers. Lock T. Higgins up. I'm excited to see how they can replace Tyler Boyd with Jermaine Burton or Charlie Jones, but I just don't think they improved a ton.
It was
right, like
it was incremental in my opinion, but I think for a team that finished last in the best division in football, look, at the end of the day, the Bengals are going to either make the Super Bowl or not make the Super Bowl because Joe Burrow is healthy and back to being Joe Burrow. So that's the biggest thing, is that the reason they had a great offseason was that Joe Burrow hasn't gotten hurt going to Michael Rubin's white party. Like, that's, to me, the biggest news for the Bengals. And so I'll give it
and they're my AFC North pick. I think they're going to be really good. Like Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I think they're just as much of a Super Bowl contender. And also, like, this is best offseason. So they didn't need. They're a good team. They didn't need crazy additions, right? Like a lot of these teams are not teams that I project to be really good, but they did make significant upgrades because they needed. Like, I have the Panthers number 8, right? And I don't they lost their best player in that, right? The same DJ Reader argument, but I did think they added some good pieces again, like the Titans, to help their young quarterback.
It's just I like the you talked very quickly about the safeties. They added 3. They added Geno Stone, they added 2, and Von Bell, whom they brought back. They really missed. They're very young and very talented in that secondary, and I think those 2 guys are going to be, particularly the return of Bell, is going to be able to rein them in and give them a grown up there that can really, really help stabilize them. And I don't think that that's something that should be undersold with a team that's
I agree.
so close.
In our free agent episodes, I think that was my pick for most underrated,
yes.
Move of offseason was bringing in Geno Stone and Von Bell, bringing him back to the Bengals. And again, this is a team that's really has a lot of talent. And it's also, it needs a lot of, like you said, they're young guys to step up, right? What's the corner they got out of DJ Turner? DJ Turner, take a step up. What's the other? I'm freaking blanking on
Dax
names.
Hill.
Dax Hill. I love Dax Hill.
I love Dax Hill as well.
Take a step up. So they need young drafted guys to take a step up. And then obviously the rest of their good roster to stay healthy. But the DJ Reader, I think that's a huge loss in a Lou Anarumo defense.
All right, very quickly, who do you have at 8, Bobby?
I have the Panthers. Another team that had a lot of turnover. Now, they lost Brian Burns, right? And they lost him for a 2nd and a 5th round pick. I think that's awful value, right? I think for a team that I think they should have just signed, Brian Burns and backload or whatever. But Deontay Johnson is a huge addition for them. And then they gave $153 million in contracts to their guards with Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis. Clowney and Ashawn Robinson to their front should really make that run defense better. You get Jordan Fuller at safety. But they did lose some guys I like. You lose Luvu and Chin to the Commanders. I know Chin hasn't lived up to his rookie year performance. And then Brian Burns. So a solid offseason. And another team that I think is not good, but can be in a good situation to where we can make a solid judgment on Bryce Young after year 2.
I don't like their draft, but I want to keep moving because Leggett at 32 and John. Why do you need Jonathan Brooks when you're a rebuilding team and he's coming off an ACL?
Somebody has to run the football.
Trevin Wallace is like a raw pick. Jatavion Sanders is for a value pick at round 4. That's honestly the pick that I like the most. Chris, you want to keep moving?
Yeah, let's go to 7. Who do you have there, Penik? We'll let you get another bite at the apple.
I have the Jets.
Woo!
I wanted to put them higher. I really did. But there's just some other teams and their processes that I like more. And I think I put a little bit more of a nod to your draft class too. And I didn't fully love the Jets draft, even though I loved their first round pick in Olu. and beefing up that offensive line. But they added 2 tackles. They added 3, because you have Olu, Tyron Smith, and Morgan Moses as well. I love the trade for Hassan Reddick. You got a guy in there that's a little bit more proven. Now they did lose some people. That's the thing. How are they going to deal with some losses that they had on that defensive line? They lost Jordan Whitehead, who I love. Jordan Whitehead. I love that he went back to Tampa Bay. I love that for them. He fit like a glove with Todd Bowles. So they lost some people for sure. But the areas in which the Jets needed to acknowledge, which is the offensive line, and the fact that they added 3 guys to a unit that can be a little injury prone, I really like that. I love the Jets offseason.
Do you want me to say where I have the Jets, guys?
Go for it.
I have them as number 1.
Oh my God.
Whoa!
As the best offseason?
I don't know about that.
Their offensive line was awful last year, and they totally revamped it, adding Tyron Smith, John Simpson, Morgan Moses, and then Olu Fashanu. Like that's huge, right? And like you've made the best pass rush, arguably like a top, not arguably, they're a top 5 pass rush wherever you want to rank them, and made it stronger with Hassan Reddick, right? I think Reddick is greater than the sum of Huff and John Franklin Myers. Yeah, I can maybe put my number 2 and number 3 team ahead of them, but to me they're a team that needs to go. Now I don't love the Mike Williams signing, but if he's healthy, he's a good piece for them.
That's why I'm surprised you have him number 1.
I just they took a huge weakness that would have been a stumbling block for them to taking advantage of the Super Bowl window with Aaron Rodgers and turned it into a strength. We did our rankings last week. We all had the Jets in the top 6 for the offensive line, right? So
yes.
I don't think it's a perfect offseason, but for the situation the Jets are in, I thought they did everything correct outside of signing Mike Williams.
I had him as number 9. I did like the offensive line repair. I would have moved them up a few slots had they gotten rid of Nathaniel Hackett. I think that's going to be an eyesore at some point this year. People will say, well, as long as Rodgers is back, that's going to cover up a lot of the warts. I need to see it. It's still the Jets. They haven't made the playoffs in 14 years or whatever it is. They have the longest playoff drought going. They have to show me something. Are they improved? Did they have a nice offseason? Yes. But I can't say it was significantly better than a lot of these teams I'm about to get to.
Here's another thing part of it. What were the 2 weakest spots of the Jets roster last year?
Well, after quarterback and their offensive line.
Backup quarterback and offensive line. So they go and add Tyrod Taylor,
yep.
who, we can we'll do a backup QB list, but he's right up there.
Oh God. We're getting too close to the season to do that.
Tyrod, and then and I look at those are positions. Offensive line is a position that you very much go spend in free agency. Go try and fix it through free agency, right? Like teams try and fix certain things in free agency and it doesn't work out. But offensive line is one of those where you can turn it around, right? Think about the Chiefs in the Super Bowl to the Bucks. They immediately turned around and had a great offensive line the following year. So I like the Jets investing into that. And if they make half of these, if they keep Zach Wilson and don't get Tyrod Taylor, if they don't get Tyron Smith and they don't get Morgan Moses, then I'm talking about, and they don't get Hassan Reddick after losing Bryce Huff. I'm talking about a team that I'm like, I just don't think they are a contender at all. But you add those to the other additions, and I think they are a Super Bowl contender. It's not a favorite, that's not tough, but they are a contender.
Okay, here I'm putting a rule in. You can no longer say if so-and-so's healthy. It's stupid. Either they're going to be healthy or they're not going to be healthy. Don't give me the if they're healthy. Like, you can't make a prognostication.
Okay, who are we talking about specifically here?
We've said it about Joe Burrow, if he's healthy. We all do it. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. It's utterly preposterous because have you ever gone into a season saying, oh, well, that guy's definitely going to get hurt? No.
Yeah, I have.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Who? Give me one name.
Last year, we were like, Darren Waller, he's going to miss 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
Mike Williams. Mike Williams is not the hope for Mike Williams is he's healthy at the right times. He's not. He's going to miss games.
So don't say then don't if you do that, then don't say if. Say when Mike
I think it's
Williams
just being
gets
healthy
hurt.
at the important parts. Don't go out for the season.
But then you can't do that. You can't pick when a guy's going to get hurt. I mean, Mike
Right, but you
Williams has
can't
gotten
pick- you
hurt at
can't-
the
you can't
beginning of
pick- You can't
seasons,
pick it.
and he's gotten hurt in the last game of a meaningless regular season finale. Like, he's gotten hurt all over the place. It just seems ridiculous. I don't know.
Okay, so what does that change about anybody's arguments here?
I don't know. I just think that they're stupid with the ifs. It caught me if so and so's healthy, and if, to me, it's much more the if word comes into if he can get back to the player he was. Like, that's something that you can actually question. I've never gone into a year saying, well,
I think it's less likely that a player who's fallen off gets back to like their original form than a guy having playing 13 out of 17 games for a guy that misses games a lot.
So what is Aaron Rodgers? What category does he fall into? Because it's been a while.
Well, his injury was kind of Aaron Rodgers has been healthy, for most of his career. He's had seasons where he's missed some games, but that was his first season-ending injury, I believe, right?
Yes, season ending. He had the broken collarbone where he missed a significant number of games.
Yeah, he's missed a handful. I mean, you play in the NFL that long, you'll miss a handful of games unless you're Eli Manning and Tom Brady outside of one season. But like, I don't view Aaron Rodgers as injury prone. Now the age is a concern, but I don't look at his career injury history like injury prone player.
All right,
Mike Williams, I do.
So was that number 7, by the way?
Yeah,
I had Detroit at 7. I just liked what they did with their cornerback room. I thought that was enough to make a huge difference. And adding DJ Reader, I know it's a major injury he's coming back from, but I like their.
I'll tell you what.
I have the Lions. I have the Falcons at 7. Like, I hate the Michael Penix pick. But like, in defense, you really didn't add anything. But I think adding Kirk Cousins, right? That's the big one. They go from a team that has no shot of winning a playoff game to a team that can win a playoff game with adding a Kirk Cousins. You get Darnell Mooney as a nice side piece to their weapons. Rondale Moore is a fun weapon. And even though they lost Calais Campbell, their defense is pretty good outside of their pass rush. There's things I hate about, the Michael Penix pick, but I think you add Kirk Cousins in free agency and make yourself a team that can compete.
Rose, did you have the Falcons up there?
I have them at 3. I think anytime
you have them at 3.
Yeah, I think anytime you change quarterback from dog shit to Pro Bowler, that's a win for the entire offseason. I don't care about the rest of it. And I do think that they're going to be coached better. Yes, you mentioned Mooney and Moore with a veteran quarterback. They're going to be utilized. Rondale Moore's got 3 touchdowns in 3 seasons. 3. That guy should be getting in the end zone a little bit more than once a year. So I just,
if they draft, sorry,
no, go ahead.
If they drafted Jared Verse at 8, or what, fill in the blank with your favorite edge, and then added one more piece to that defensive front after, or even keeping Calais Campbell, I would have them in the top 5, no doubt. But I
also would have them.
I hate the 8th overall pick, like the number 8 pick. That really hurts. But like, I think Mooney is a really smart signing. Rondale Moore, like you mentioned, I like him too, as like a gadget player. And then defensively, they didn't add much, but they're a pretty good defensive unit last year. They just need that pass rush desperately.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't have them. I don't have them in my top 8 because I just think it's bad process, and I also think it immediately sent a bad message to Kirk Cousins.
But I don't understand that. Do you think Kirk Cousins is going to play poorly this year because they drafted Michael Penix? Do you think a guy who's in his mid-30s has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank and is definitely the quarterback for this year and probably next year is going to be upset because they drafted a quarterback at 8? You think that he's going to walk into camp?
Well, he is upset.
He is, and
he's gotten past
that. Doesn't mean that he's going to play worse. Doesn't mean he's going to play worse.
No, but he is upset.
But I think it's just bad process of number one. I think it's bad process just to do that. Number one, but then number 2, what's bad for Kirk Cousins is just not even letting him know, because then that may alter even Kirk Cousins' decision on if he wants to come here or not, knowing that they want to draft a quarterback in the first round. Which therefore, if the Falcons give somebody $50 million to come play for their football team and somebody else is going to give them 40, they're going to choose the Falcons. But I think it just sets a bad principle for, to coming to play for the Atlanta Falcons.
Do you think they're better or worse than they were last year?
I think they're much better, but I think they could have been
significantly
much better. Yeah, because again, just looking at the quarterback upgrade in a vacuum, but looking at the process of how they've gone about this offseason, man, it could have been so much better if they drafted that defensive player at 8. And we're looking at this stacked team, especially, again, if it's a defensive player, looking at this stacked defense and looking at this stacked team and talking about them doing more. But instead, they want to be half pregnant of, all right, well, we're building for this future that we don't even know that's here because Michael Penix is even just a raw prospect to begin with. But then we just gave Kirk Cousins this money now. I don't like being half pregnant. Like, be committed to a rebuild or be committed to being all in.
So you're right about that entire philosophy. If the question is, can the Falcons be better than 7-10? To me, it's a no-brainer. And the reason is because they finally have a quarterback that they can turn to and be like, here, go get us to the playoffs. And he can do that. The rest of it, fine. I'm with you on the rest of it. But I think they're significantly better. Who do you have at 6?
Well, I want to go back to something because we glanced on this. Bobby, do you have the Lions anywhere? Because Rose mentioned them.
I have them 5th.
I have them first.
Okay. So again, the Lions probably, I love their offseason, but like he's, within this conversation, the best teams in the NFL, they're not going to make significant upgrades at a bunch of positions.
But they kind of did.
I know. That's the thing is, like, I think they took care of their weaknesses, right? Like, well, Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis, those are long man coverage corners. That's what they like to do, and they just didn't have that unit last year. DJ Rader, again, maybe the most underrated player in the NFL, makes a nice duo with him and Ali McNeil. And their biggest strength, their offensive line, they somehow made stronger. They replaced Jonah Jackson with Kevin Zeitler. So I have them 5th, but like, just because, like, I'm just looking at this, like, how much did you upgrade your team from from the last season to the next? But like, they had maybe, if we're saying smartest off seasons, I think the Lions are right there.
And I also really value as well keeping your own. And I really put a heavy influence into that. It's why, my number 6 team, which I guess we'll get to eventually, my number 6 team really did do a good job of keeping their own. But they re-signed Jared Goff, they re-signed Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they re-signed Penei Sewell. You mentioned the draft class that they had, and NX Rakestraw is in there too. I love Carlton Davis. I think he can handle covering number 1 wide receivers, while Terrion Arnold is, gaining confidence and maybe not having so much on his plate. I hate to see corners, unless your name is Sauce Gardner. I hate to see corners that automatically have to garner wide receiver 1 treatment in the NFL, because I think it's the hardest position to really transition towards. They got rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson, who I thought was a freaking head case. And you mentioned the rest of the additions that they made. And something you didn't talk about was they kept Ben Johnson. Even if Ben Johnson is an asshole, and even if Ben Johnson, maybe lost a little bit of positive rep for him during this head coaching search process of screwing over the Commanders, doesn't change the fact that a mad scientist that likes to lock himself in the office and coming up with schemes doesn't change the fact that he's still in Detroit. And that's awesome. That's awesome for Jared Goff. And it's awesome for the Detroit Lions Super Bowl window. The only risky thing is giving Jared Goff basically 4 years of big guaranteed money. They really backloaded this contract, but who cares about 4 years from now what Jared Goff's cap hit is? Who cares? I don't care. The Lions have a Super Bowl roster right now. Do I think Jared Goff can kind of take them there? I have my doubts on Jared Goff himself, but this roster is unbelievable, and it is ready to win the Super Bowl.
How many wins did they get last year?
Wiz?
They got...
I'm going to say 12.
12 is correct. They were the 2 seed in the NFC. So
they're going to be the 1 seed.
They could be the 1 seed this year. I just have a hard time moving them up significantly. It'd be like saying Kansas City had this amazing offseason because they
I think they're going to kick. I think they're going to start kicking the shit out of people. Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think they led the league in pressure rate last year, and they led the league in pressures. Now, you wouldn't really, Aiden Hutchinson really carried a big load of that, but you're not going to have one guy doing that solely by himself. Now, they needed more help in the sacks and QB hits department, but they added those guys up front. They added, I know the comparison of what the lines were last year with 12 wins, but I think that they did get that much better, and that's why I do put them number one.
Yeah, I just don't see that. But I think they had a nice offseason. I have the Chargers at 6. Anybody else have the Chargers around?
I don't. I
just think their coach makes a huge difference.
Me too.
I have the Chargers.
But
I have the Chargers at 4.
I think if I tried to not put I tried to make this more player oriented with like a sprinkle of coaching. It's just like they had cap issues, right? So they just weren't able to do a ton with free agency. Their draft was fine. But again, like draft is those are young players. So I didn't put them on there, even though the head coaching thing, I think they're going to be the most improved team, but I think it's solely off of coaching with a sprinkle of players. And they lose, you lost Keenan Allen. So I think they were in a tough spot to really upgrade the roster this year.
I would agree with that. I think they've gone entirely from a pass-happy team to a wannabe dominant run team, not only with, the selection of all, but they picked up a couple of, tight ends in Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Are they elite? No. Are they better than Austin Eckler? Maybe if you put them together, possibly. But I think their coach is going to make such a big difference that, to me, that's an enormous thing. And it's pretty simple, right? It's always quarterbacks and coaches. And if you're not right in those areas, then what are we doing anyway? I think that the Chargers are one of the teams out there that you could feel like, yeah, they've got those two. Now let's go work on the rest. So to me, that's a pretty big deal. If you find one of those two parts in the offseason, great. And that's what happened, in my opinion.
Yeah, I look at them as a team that underachieved due to coaching last year,
Yes.
and then they're going to overachieve this year due to coaching. So I didn't have them on the list, but I do agree they're going to be maybe the most improved team in the NFL this year.
And I like that they showed restraint because they could have made some aggressive moves. And Bobby, like you said, they have cap trouble. It's pretty easy in the NFL to move money around, backload guys, add void years. So the Chargers could look at it. Oh, we have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is still on the cheap side of his contract. His cap hit is extremely, extremely low this year, and they still have trouble. So they could have been like a little bit aggressive, but they showed restraint. They traded Keenan Allen. They released Mike Williams. And the most impressive part is they retained Khalil Mack and Bosa, and they got him to take a pay cut. Where, those were guys that maybe they were going to have to cut this offseason. But instead, Khalil Mack had a career resurgent year. They get him, still have a high cap hit, but they got him to take a pay cut. They added a void year to his contract next year. And then Joey Bosa also took a pay cut. Keeping those two guys is huge for a roster that does need help. So I like their offseason from the standpoint of they drafted really well, but then also for their timeline, they showed restraint and they're not rushing things. And they're going to be set up to hopefully do some good stuff.
All right,
I had
5.
the Rams number 6. Did you guys have the Rams anywhere?
No, I did not.
So
I had the Rams number 5.
Okay, so adding Jonah Jackson to that O-line while keeping Dotson, $33 per mil on your starting guards, you get to move Avila to center. In the secondary, they signed some good pieces: Cam Carl, Tre'Davious White, Darius Williams. They got the biggest draft class bump for me because I think they have 4 guys from that class that are going to contribute day one with Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and I'm not the biggest Braden Fisk fan, Cam Kinchins, and then Blake Corum gives them a really nice 1-2 punch with Kyron Williams. And I even like some of their depth signings or draft picks of like Bo Limmer or Tyler Davis. So they got the biggest draft class bump for me.
Yeah, I love their draft class. The only thing I didn't fully love is they traded up a decent haul for Braden Fisk.
Yeah, that I hate that move. That's the only thing from their offseason that I just don't like. But I also think Fisk is going to be good for them.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I didn't like from their offseason? That Aaron Donald retired. And I don't like it when guys who are good could go put on a gold jacket the minute they write the words "I'm retired," because we think that 2 guys are going to be really good in the draft. So
they didn't release Aaron Donald. I'm not gonna ding them for a guy retiring.
No, but it is part of their offseason, is it not?
Yeah, I agree with Chris because I would have had the Rams closer to 3-2-1 if Aaron Donald is here. But I considered losing. Doesn't matter of how it kind of happened. They lost Aaron Donald.
Right. It's
and
no
that's
fault
going
of
to, and
theirs.
it's a question on how that's going to impact their team for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think losing him is more significant than the gains that they made, which was pretty decent. Top 5, I imagine we've already touched on a bunch of these teams. Anybody have Houston?
I had them number 2. And I really thought about making them number 1. I mean, you add Stephon Diggs to make that wide receiver trio really nice. Joe Mixon is an upgrade to Devin Singletary. And then I love the defensive signings. Danielle Hunter is a beast. And then you add Danico Autry to that D-line. And then I think Azeez Al-Shaair from the Titans at linebackers. I think he's going to be really nice under D'Amico Ryans. So it's like I kind of... Now, here's the part I didn't like. Was the changing Stephon Diggs contract up. Because then it was... That to me was a little ugly. And I don't think that's a great long-term thing. But for this year... I like the Stephon Diggs trade for him. I think he's going to come in and be on his best behavior, and I think they've made serious upgrades.
Yeah, I should have switched my 2 and 5 teams here. I don't know why I didn't, to be honest with you. So yeah, Houston is a team I actually. What the hell? I'm going to move them up right now. I'm going to make them my number 2 team because of what you just said. I don't know why I did that. I think I forgot about them and I put them in late. But yeah, they're a team that can go from whatever they had, 9 wins last year. They have 9 or 10. Let's see here. Last year, they had 10 wins. If they got to 13 and became a top 2 seed in the AFC, it would not shock me. Would not.
Yeah, they're a Super Bowl contender.
Yep. They're really good.
And I think without these moves, they're not that.
Nope.
So, so I thought they made, 4 moves that can really make an impact on a Super Bowl, which is Diggs, Hunter, Autry, and Azeez Al-Shaair. And I like Joe. I think Joe Mixon still got some juice left to replace Devin Singletary.
Yep. So I'm putting Houston all the way up to 2. Who do you have 5 there, Penik?
I said I had the Rams at 5,
Okay.
but I didn't talk about my number 6 team yet.
Who's that?
The Indianapolis Colts.
Huh. They didn't lose anybody. That's
exactly why I love it, because they retained their own. Michael Pittman, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, Grover Stewart, and Tyquan Lewis are some of the guys that they signed the new deals. Now, I don't love their draft class. I'd be lying to you if I said that I love their class. I like A.D. Mitchell in round 2. I don't know the character concerns or why he fell. Kind of question, makes me ask some questions. I don't like Tanner Bornolini. I don't even like Latu at 15. Chris, I know you really disagree on that. You love Latu. But I loved their process of they didn't lose anybody. They didn't fully go all in on, hey, Anthony Richardson year 2. We got to do everything possible to surround him with the best. They're keeping their O-linemen together. They're setting themselves up for success. And if, depending on the year that Anthony Richardson has, they can make a big swing in 2025. And there aren't many teams in the NFL. If you look on Over the Cap and, they have a tool of, you can see how many players are under contract through 2024, 2025, 2026. I decided to just look at how many players are on the Colts in 2026. There's 40. There's some teams in the NFL that have more, but there's 40 players under contract for the Indianapolis Colts in 2026, which is a lot. So they have a core. They have a really good structure, and I liked their process, the process of their offseason. They even added Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback.
4 and 3. I don't know if we have teams that haven't been touched on yet. We've hit on Washington and Atlanta for me. 4 and 3.
Yeah, mine. My number 4 is the Chicago Bears, and my number 3 is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
Where do you guys have those 2 teams, or did you have them?
I do not have Philly in there because I think that losing future Hall of Famers possibly on each line,
just fair,
was really tough for me.
It is tough, but I think their secondary, which was the coordinators, right? Vic Fangio is an amazing upgrade.
Huge.
I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore fan, but it'll be better than Brian Johnson by a wide margin. think there's probably 30 coordinators in the NFL that have been huge upgrades over Brian Johnson. And again, like Saquon Saquon's is gonna be really good for them. Paris Campbell, I think that's an underrated move. They need like Paris Campbell's, a year away from season when he had like 700 yards. So he's a perfect fit for them in that slot. And then the secondary, right? You go out, get Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the draft. You bring back Chauncey Gardner, who like is a head case, but was a good fit for them. And then
he's perfect for them.
They did lose Hassan Reddick, but they replaced him with Bryce Huff, who was like number 1 in all pass rush efficiency numbers. You have to give him a bigger role. And to me, the coordinators are again going like the Chargers, right? Are going from maybe the worst in the NFL to Vic Fangio could be the best DC in the NFL. Kellen Moore is a middle of the pack offensive coordinator to me.
You had the Bears at 3, huh?
Well, I
had them
also,
at 4.
4.
I had the Eagles at 3,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to add on to Bobby's point of they even extended their own 2, where you have Devontae Smith extensions, you have AJ Brown extensions, you have Jordan Mailata extensions, and they extended Landon Dickerson, even though he is the highest paid guard in the National Football League. It isn't by much, and Landon Dickerson is the best guard in the NFL, at least right now, in my opinion, and he's getting paid $21 million, while there's a lot of guards that are being paid $20 million, and the gap between the skill level is certainly substantial. So they did a really good job. I think it was quite, they paid up for Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, but I think they got some really good value deals with Mailata and Landon Dickerson in there too.
And then for me, they went from a team that collapsed, like a collapse like we've never seen, to a team that is my number 2 team in the NFC after the 49ers.
Yeah. They could collapse. It's not going to be because of their talent. That's for sure.
Bears?
The Bears.
I had them at 4. Where did you guys have them?
1.
Woo! I like that.
I had them at 2.
Here, offensively, they did a lot, right? You had Caleb Williams at quarterback. That's sick. You had Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. I don't love DeAndre Swift, but I think he can have some success there. Defensively, they just kind of stayed pat, besides replacing Eddie Jackson with Kevin Byard, which I don't blame them for moving off Eddie Jackson with that contract and his injury history. But Eddie Jackson is one of my favorite players in the NFL, and Byard wasn't stellar.
He hasn't been good
for Philly last year. So they kind of stayed pat defensively, which they should have. They got young guys that are going to hopefully step up. They spent a lot of money the year
extending
before,
Jalen Johnson
for Montez Sweat. Yeah, keeping Jalen Johnson's big, but like they didn't they didn't upgrade from their roster last year. But I have the number 4 because I think that offense, and I think Luke Getsy is an upgraded offensive coordinator, or not Luke Getsy,
Shane Waldron.
Shane Waldron over Luke Getsy.
So since 2021, the Chicago Bears have averaged a league low 167 yards passing per game. In today's world, the NFL, how the hell does that happen? Well, that will not happen now. It will not. I know the weather gets nasty in mid to late November or whatever. Not with this quarterback and not with this group of receivers. And Cole Kmet's a nice player. And DeAndre Swift can catch the ball out of the backfield. This team is going to look. I don't remember the last time the Chicago Bears offense has been something you've wanted to sit down and watch. It has been a long time. I'm ready. I'm ready to watch them. I'm super excited about them. And I think that they're going to. I don't think they're going to push Detroit quite yet, or Green Bay quite yet for a title, but they're going to be getting close, and it has turned the division on its head, which 18 months ago we were like, ugh, I can't watch an NFC North game, to almost you can't miss an NFC North game.
I'm so excited. Like week 1, they're the team I want to watch the most. I don't even know who they're playing off the top of my head, but they're the team that I want to watch week 1. I want to see how that offense is. I want to see how the defensive grows. I'm like you said, I'm super excited for the Chicago Bears.
They're playing the Titans. That's actually going to be a really fun game. Can you believe that 1 year ago we say the Titans versus Bears week 1 is going to be a really fun game?
Well, it's not even like just the game. I just want to see how the Chicago Bears roll out this season. Is it going to be a slow start, or can they come out humming? Because they got the pieces to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I put them number 2, not necessarily because, like, yeah, do I think even the Eagles, like, do I think that they added more talent? Yes. Did they keep more talent? Yes. But the Bears, the next decade and a half, hopefully, their fans are going to be happy every single year, like hopefully, and that's what I'm hoping. And that's honestly, that's the expectation for Caleb Williams. And I know we try not to, as football fans or even as a unbiased whatever analysts, we try not to do that and fall into that. But I've fallen into it with Caleb Williams, and they stumbled into Odunze. The Carolina Panthers gifted them DJ. They still have that awesome core. 4th round pick for Keenan Allen. Sure, we'll take him. Like, it just unbelievable. And I even like Bobby. I don't know if you mentioned they added Kevin Byard as well. I think Kevin Byard's still got a little something left.
Yeah,
in the tank from Philly and the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, it's on paper it's a downgrade because Eddie Jackson is phenomenal, but Eddie Jackson just misses so much time every single year.
Yeah,
and he had that big contract, so it made sense to move off of him. Which Eddie Jackson's still available. Go to a Super Bowl contender because he can make a difference. He's really fucking good.
All right.
Yeah, and I honestly think that Shane Waldron is one of the, like, when you mentioned Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, they had a decision to make it offense coordinator. And I'm surprised that Shane Waldron went to another situation that is kind of in flux, because Eberflus's job isn't fully safe if they don't exceed expectations this year. Shane Waldron, could also be out of a job, and maybe, he's seen in NFL circles and NFL, and is not seen as favorable.
But if that offense plays well, he'll probably be a head coach next year too.
Right. So I'm sure that's the risk reward that he weighed.
So top 3, has anybody not mentioned a team?
No,
I have everybody.
I think we have everybody.
Jets, Texans, Eagles. I think my top 3 is 3 teams that went from, not Super Bowl contenders to Super Bowl contenders with the additions they made.
Mine's got 1 Super Bowl contender in Houston and 2 significantly improved teams because of quarterback situation.
So why don't we go through our top 10? Justin, you go first.
Well, I'll go through my top 8. I have the Lions at number 1. I have the Bears at number 2. The Eagles, number 3. The Chargers, number 4. The Rams at number 5. The Colts at 6. And then I had the Jets and Bengals at 7 and 8.
I had the Bears, Texans, Falcons, Washington, Arizona. I didn't mention them, but they made so many changes. And I just thought that their pickup of Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to change the look of that offense immensely. Chargers, Lions, Bengals, Jets, Steelers.
I went Jets 1, Texans 2, Eagles, Bears, Lions round out my top 5, Rams, Falcons, Panthers, Commanders, and then the Titans at number 10.
Well, I'm sure some of us are going to be right at some point this year, and we'll revisit, I'm sure, next offseason to see how we did in terms of if these teams actually looked any better or if they're still drafting very high in some cases. We are back at it again later this week with some sort of fun-filled episode. Maybe we'll come up with a list, try something creative and new, but we'll see if we can do that. Producer Mikey, bang up job as always. For Bobby and Justin, I'm Chris. We will see you Friday here on Football Today.